I love Don Meyer, and something that he always said is you can get all the great ideas, you just can't use all the great ideas. And we've really tried to narrow down our identity to 3 or 4 basketball things every year, 3 or 4 aspects of the game, and 3 or 4 values that we want to live by. And, I think the more narrow that focus is, the better chance you have of actually getting the kind of culture that you want and getting the kind of team you want.
Welcome to the Jamodi Podcast, where we interview coaches and leaders to find out not just what they do, but how they do what they do. Becoming the best version of ourselves is Jamodi, just a matter of doing it. Today we're joined by head men's basketball coach of Midland Christian School, Chris Ryburn. Coach Ryburn has 229 wins in just 9 years as a head coach and has led the Mustangs to 3 Final Fours. He's been District Coach of the Year 5 times and the 2020 MRT Coach of the Year. In 2019, Coach Ryburn won the TABC Don Coleman Outstanding Coach Award. Before we hear from Coach, take a moment to subscribe to our podcast and follow us on social media at Jamodi Podcast. Thanks for doing this, man. How are you feeling?
Oh, absolutely, man. Happy to do it. I'm honored to be on, really.
What's the best thing that you've borrowed lately or stolen?
Well, I think everything that I do is probably stolen from somebody. And this really isn't something that is necessarily late. I wouldn't say it's lately, but it's just the first thing that jumps out in my mind. I was listening to Chris Beard speak at a clinic. It was actually when he was at UNLV for a brief stint. And he really was just talking about how high school coaches, he hears a lot of high school coaches make excuses for why they can't do things and, complain about maybe the resources they don't have and just how they really can't take things from college programs because they can't pull off what they can pull off. And when he started to talk about that, it really had an impact on me. And I had definitely been guilty of that at times. And so my assistant, Trent Langford, and we just started looking at our program and trying to think about ways that we could improve and things that maybe we were missing out on because we didn't feel like we had the resources. And so we really just started stealing things from Chris Beard and his staff at Texas Tech. And one example of that is we had a few players that were, smaller, really needed to gain weight and bulk up. And so we built our own shake bar. Like we bought a blender, we went and got a refrigerator off Craigslist and put it back, behind our locker room. And we had a kid gain 30 pounds from between his sophomore and junior year. And just starting to do some of those little things that it really started to add up. And so that, that had an impact on me, and it's really started to kind of add up over the years. Another example is our managers. We had a manager, his name's Luke Sefcik. He's actually at LSU as a student manager now, but Luke is just one of those people that he's a great kid. He's super talented, and Trent Langford gets a lot of the credit for directing our managers and really just kind of raising their expectations. And it's amazing how when you have quality people, they will rise or fall to the expectations that you set for them. And Luke became a great manager, and he actually brought on some younger guys and trained them as managers. And now it's just a part of our culture that we have these managers who really help us, and we feel like help us actually win games in the long run. And so just kind of stealing that idea from Chris Beard that all the little things matter, and where there's a will, there's a way to pull off some of these things that maybe a higher level program does.
No, I appreciate you sharing that. And as soon as you said it, I went back to the hundreds of excuses or things that I've been frustrated with over the years. And that's just a great perspective to have about them. Dick DiVenzio had a quote, or maybe he told a story, the founder of PGC, but he said, somebody else with your same set of circumstances could do way more. And that it's kind of along those same lines. And knowing you for years now, I do see you as somebody that does a lot and figures out a way to get the most out of his teams and his people.
Yeah, absolutely. It's even this weekend at the clinic, I think it was Steve Gomez who said you can't you can't get the best job, but you can make the best of the job you have. And I think there's a lot of truth to that.
How does culture drive performance?
That's culture's it's kind of a buzzword these days, but I think it's a buzzword for a reason. And when I think of culture, I just think of identity, and that as a basketball program or football program or team, I think it's really important the identity that you choose. And I feel like we're, as coaches, a lot of times we're guilty of maybe chasing too many things and trying to be good at too many things. And I love Don Meyer, and something that he always said is, you can get all the great ideas, you just can't use all the great ideas. And we've really tried to narrow down our identity to 3 or 4 basketball things every year, 3 or 4 aspects of the game, and 3 or 4 values that we want to live by. And I think the more narrow that focus is, the better chance you have of actually getting the kind of culture that you want and getting the kind of team you want. And so I think, that's one of the cool things about culture, is you get to kind of choose what you want to emphasize and what you want to be great at. And I think your program at Faith is a great example of that. Like, if somebody were to come to your practice or watch your teams play, they would very quickly understand what your culture is all about and what your identity is. And, I think if that's something we all need to ask ourselves, is if somebody were to come step into our gym and watch one of our practices, would they be able to tell what our identity is and what our culture is?
That's a great point. What were some things this year that do you choose those values every year? Is it based on kind of what your players or coaching staff come up together, or do you have a set standards that from year to year don't change?
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of both. I think you're going to have, there's a couple things that stick out in my mind that I may get into a little bit later that are going to be the same every year. And I think one of those things is what we call relentlessness, or just an every play mindset. And like I said, I'll touch on that later, but that's something that's never going to change. But I do think there are maybe some aspects of the game that might change year to year based on our personnel. And that's maybe something that's a little more specific to high school, because our players that come through our programs change.
You and I don't recruit.
That's right.
Don't recruit, yeah.
That's right. And so, you can't control the players you have. You can only control how you develop them and what you emphasize. And so, some of those things do change from year to year. But I think your values and your culture, those things are going to be pretty constant.
Hey, you guys do such a great job of showing off that word relentless. Like, even the way that when it's after halftime, some teams they'll talk for a second, or they'll walk into the locker room. Your guys run from the bench to the locker room, and they run back. How do you go about, in those little things, teaching that kind of relentless culture?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think it kind of goes back to being able to develop an identity, and that's one of those small things that is I would say is a non-negotiable for us. Like, you're gonna stand up on the bench when somebody comes out of the game. You're gonna run on and off the court, and we try to really identify what are the non-negotiables, and let's not have too many of them to where we create all this work that we maybe can't really be consistent in. I think if you start picking a whole bunch of things, it's really hard to be consistent. And so, that's something that maybe I've matured a little bit as a coach, and letting a couple things go that I maybe didn't care about as much, and saying, you know what, I'm not going to beat the players down with that detail, because I don't think it matters quite as much as this thing. I'm going to make sure the kids know what our identity is, and make sure they know what our non-negotiables are. And that happens to be one of them.
Yeah, that's a great point. There's hundreds of things that we could nitpick about if we wanted to, but then you just ended up, you get players that are confused, that have too many things going on. They don't even know the clear direction that you want them to go. So I think that's a great point, that you choose the things that are most important for you to emphasize. and that culture. You can see it from watching your teams play. They live it out.
Well, I appreciate that.
Coaches, the Jamodi podcast is powered by Biology. What's your BSA score? The Biology Skill Assessment is the only verified skills metric endorsed by the NIA and NJCAA to discover and develop the best talent for your team. This 10-minute, 100-shot test can be taken for free today on the Biology mobile app. Elevate your game. What's the one thing that makes your program different?
Well, man, I say this kind of with a little bit of hesitation. I don't want to say that we're better at this than anybody. It's just something that we really try to identify with. It's something we try to make our identity, and it is that relentlessness, or what we call an every play mindset. A while back, I was looking back at some of our previous seasons and looking at some numbers, and in any given game, an average game, there'd be about 120 possessions between the two teams. What is it for you guys?
Offensively, we want to be around 80 or 90.
Okay. So it's going to be more, because you guys play so fast, there's going to be more possessions in the game.
Mm-hmm.
But, in an average game for us, there might be 60 to 70 possessions for us, and then 60 to 70 for the other team. So we're looking at 120 possessions a game. And in any one of those games, or any one of those possessions, you're going to have, at least between 8 to 10 actions. And that might be a pass, a screen, a cut. And when you multiply that out, you're looking at 1,000 plus actions every game. And how many times do players or teams let one thing that happened on one of those actions affect the next one? And, it's something that I feel like we can really gain an advantage if we learn how to play every single one of those actions our best. The closer we get to doing that, the closer we get to being the best version of ourselves, the best version of our team. And I almost feel like, Matt, like it's kind of like the Holy Grail that's hiding in plain sight. That's the way I feel about it. And I think a lot of times, even though we hold it so close to our heart and make it a part of our identity, we still forget about it. And we start to focus on things that don't impact winning as much. But that to me is got to be the one constant for us, and that we are going to try to be the best at. And it's one thing that we have a lot of control over.
I think you're right that you have a lot of control over it, but not a lot of teams. Our team probably quite a bit. We don't do a good job of that. So how do you instill that in your players? Because it's easy to say it at the beginning of the year. Hey, we're going to be an every possession, every moment team. But how do you actually help them to achieve that?
Yeah, I think, you have to be about it. You have to be about it, and you have to be really consistent as a coach. And I keep saying this, I think it's one of the reasons why you need to really have an identity as a coach and be able to say, okay, here are my priorities. This is what I'm going to be great at. And that to us is our number one priority. And that's where I feel like sometimes we do get an advantage, because other people, they may make another aspect their number one priority that maybe isn't quite as important as that. And that's just my opinion.
Yeah.
I think a great way to do that is film. We try to sit down and watch a lot of one-on-one film with players and help them to understand what we see. And I think that's a lot of times when you coach in the moment and you tell a player something or you correct them, they don't understand what you see as the coach.
Mm-hmm.
And sitting down and watching film gives you a chance to help the player see what you see as a coach. And that's one of the ways we try to use film, is to show players where maybe they're falling short and not playing every play. And I think that's one of the best tools to help us achieve that mentality.
I'm going to try to dig a little deeper, because I want to know how you do it. I think watching film one-on-one is a great idea, but you've got so much time in a day, especially during the school year. What's your strategy when do you find those times, steal those moments with individual players to watch film?
Yeah, I say we use that. No matter how good a job we do, as a staff and watching film with our players one-on-one, we don't do a good enough job. There's always more.
You could do more. Yeah.
We could do more. But the 30 minutes before school is a time we try to use where we can maybe just easily catch guys coming on their way to class and catch us for 15 minutes. Lunchtime, right after lunch, right after our athletic period, and then before and after practice, or times we just try to cut out. One great idea, the Texas Tech fans aren't going to like me complimenting Chris Beard so much, but, and I'm a Texas Tech guy, but he's a great coach and has done a lot of great things. One thing that he spoke about at a clinic was how he has a bowl on his desk with all the players' names, and whenever he gets a chance, he takes a name out and he makes sure to make some sort of contact or communication. And that's one way we use that idea with film, is to take a name out and say, okay, I'm going to grab this guy and do film with him. And then just text him and say, hey, come in before school. Let's watch 10 minutes of film, and kind of hold you accountable.
Awesome idea. Love it. I'm going to get a bowl, and it's going to be because I think I am one of those guys that when I hear something, I am going to try it. So Don Meyer probably would have gone insane with me because, that's a good idea. Let's try that and then see what sticks. But that's awesome. How do you teach shooting confidence with your teams?
This is one thing that shooting confidence I think is really important. I think it's really tricky. And I think it's something that early on as a coach, I feel like I had a lot of things going for me early on as a coach. I had the chance to work for a great coach in Todd Duncan and learned a lot from him. I was really passionate, and I was consumed with the game, maybe obsessed. And, I was willing to work really hard, but there was a lot that I didn't know and wasn't very mature about. And, I think I was really bad about, I would define what a good shot was, but then I would turn around and I would get frustrated by that shot if I didn't like the result, and that's really confusing to players. And I think we really have a tendency to do that as coaches. So one, I think if you're going to give shooting confidence, you have to give freedom, and you can't have total control. And I think it's a really hard balance to strike. And I don't know that there's any one right answer. I think one way we try to do that is again, we try to teach them to be process oriented and not results oriented. And we try to use film to do that. One example of that is we have a freshman, his name's Zach Day, got a chance to be a really, really great shooter. He already is a great shooter. I was trying to teach Zach about shot selection and trying to be really careful about making sure that I protected his confidence. And so, one thing we did with Zach is brought him in, made a highlight film of every shot, every 3-point shot he took over the course of the year. And I would let him grade the shot 1 to 10, but I would pause it as soon as he landed and before the ball got to the rim. So he wouldn't get a chance to see how the shot ended up. He would just get to see the situation, his balance, his follow through. And, I think that's a good way to do it, because you take the result out. Because if a shot goes in, a kid's automatically going to think, well, it was a, 7, 8, 9, 10 on a scale of 1 to 10. But I think, again, if you sit down and you watch film with them, you get a chance to show them what you see as the coach. And, maybe I could better explain to him sitting down and watching film that we could have got a better shot if you'd have made one more pass here, or maybe 2 possessions before we had taken a couple quick 3-point shots and we wanted to get into our, a couple reversals before we take that shot. And I think being able to show them on film, you get to help them kind of see some of the nuances that they don't see when they're out on the court.
I love that idea of having them rate or judge the shot before they see the outcome through film. I think that's really powerful. One thing you said too that was unique is you want to help to protect their confidence. So like a shooter, we can't give them a lot of confidence as coaches, because deep down they know if they've prepared or not. They can't lie to themselves. So this kid, this freshman, he's prepared. So he has the right to be confident. He's put in the time. So at that point, then we can come alongside of him and help him protect it. Because I think the idea of, as coaches, us giving them confidence where they don't have any confidence, but now we're going to give it to them. I just don't think it works like that.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I think that's a big part of it too, is understanding that, or helping players understand that your skill is a big part of your confidence. And, it takes skill to have confidence. And a great example of that is Joseph Van Zant, who was an four-time All-State player for us. There was nothing I could do to take his confidence away because he was just really good, and he's got that in him. And trying to help players understand that, hey, he has earned his confidence because he spent a lot of time in the gym.
Yeah. One of the things I hate hearing, a few years ago, I was coaching select ball, and after one of our workouts, a parent came up and said, "Oh, we're so glad that they're here and they're going to be coached." And it made me feel really good. But then they said their high school coach really stole their confidence. Mm-hmm. And in that moment, I kind of wanted to say, you know what? I don't think this is going to work out, because it wouldn't be long. It wouldn't be long until I said something or I did something that they viewed as, oh, he's stealing his confidence away too. So I think the more that we can help our players to feel like they've prepared, whether it's practice, giving them a plan, but then, like you said, coming alongside of them and helping protect it. That's huge. The Jamodi podcast is powered by Sideline Interactive. Sideline Interactive is the leading manufacturer for high-quality, innovative scoring tables and LED video display boards that help coaches and schools bring more excitement to fans, create huge fundraising opportunities, and make their jobs easier. Visit sidelineinteractive.com to check out their amazing products. How do you use social media to enhance your program?
This is something I can take zero credit for. Our assistant coach, Trent Langford, who is good at so many things and does so many things to impact our program, he does all of our social media, and he's done an incredible job. And you can, if you're listening and you're a high school coach and you're interested in maybe doing a little bit more, having more of a presence, you can look up our Twitter and Instagram. It's at MCS Mustang BB, I think. Let me make sure that's right. MBB, at MCS Mustang MBB. But Trent really just kind of taught himself how to do it. He started, learning Photoshop and then, copying a lot of the things that college programs are doing and trying to emulate them. But what I think it's really done, and the way we've used it, is to try to, it's really just kind of grow our army and bring other people in. I mean, in 2019, 2020, when we were able to have full attendance, we had 3 games that had over 1,000 people come to our game, and that's over capacity. And a lot of those people are just from the community. And I really believe that a lot of that is because of the way that Trent promotes our players on social media. The players love it. And the other thing is we'll use it to try to get some student involvement. Maybe we'll have a contest. We try to have a contest at halftime of every game and do a giveaway. If the player can make a half-court shot or whatever, and it's a chance to kind of pull people in and get some engagement and involvement with the community. But I think, that the social media is something that I think a lot of us maybe tend to dismiss, and I think I did early on, but I think it's a big part of it. And it matters to these kids. And so if you can, use it to highlight them and to elevate them and lift them up to the public, it's great PR for your program. And it's great for your kids.
Man, if Trent is awesome. Like everything that Faith does, and with Photoshop and everything, like I am constantly trying to just be close to him, and he's done a great job of teaching me. If any coaches are interested, reach out to Chris, and then reach out to his assistant Trent. Like he does an amazing job. And this was years ago. I was listening to a podcast, and 2010 or something around there. But I heard a coach say, if you're not actively using social media to hype up or enhance your program, you're behind. And that, as a competitor, I don't like to ever think that I'm behind in something or not helping my guys out of my program the way that I can. And another thing too is I think we allow our players to be more humble and not have to brag on themselves. We get to brag on them, and we allow them to share and retweet. So that way it's us drawing attention to them, and not what is tough is when the players are drawing attention to themselves, And so I think social media is a great way to do that. And there's guys and coaches out like Trent that will share with you what he does, and it just does a phenomenal job.
Absolutely. We're lucky to have Trent and all the things that he does, social media included, to make our program better.
What's your favorite culture building activity with your team?
I'm going to say two things on this. I think one is this actually involves our whole program, but every year in the fall we have a fundraiser, and it is a pancake supper where we make a bunch of pancakes and bacon and a breakfast for dinner before one of our football games. We have it right across from the football field. We have the players sell tickets. It's actually a great fundraiser for our program. But the thing we really try to make sure we do is that we get 100% participation from every family in our program. And what I feel like that's done is it's given us a chance to do something before the season where we pull everybody in and get people involved. Because I've had years where we have, maybe 2 or 3 families who their parents, you just don't see them all year. You don't interact with them. And it gives us a chance to make sure we make that connection, make contact, and for everybody to get to do something together that benefits the program. And the players, they all volunteer, they all work. It's just a good time before we get into the season, and it makes sure that we prevent our first interaction with the parent being a negative one.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And, a lot of times the first time you meet a parent is when they're sitting down and they want to talk about playing time, and it kind of sets the tone for the relationship. So I think that's something that we do that really benefits our culture.
Before you go to the next one, when you say whole program, 7th grade up or freshman year up, high school only?
It's really high school only. We try to get our junior high guys, get them there to attend, but we don't have them necessarily participate.
What about your multi-sport athletes? So obviously football players that are engaged in the game and stuff, they don't participate, but never mind. That doesn't make any sense. Yeah, forget that. Keep going.
We do have the football guys. We have them sell tickets at least, and
okay,
to promote it. And we always feed the football team after, and that includes some of our basketball guys.
Nice. What was your second one?
The second one is we always try to do a service project. Something that's service oriented. That is one of those values. I think it was a John Wooden quote that happiness begins where selfishness ends. And we really try to make selflessness a one of our core values and a part of our identity, because I think it's so important for them to learn in their lives how to be selfless, and what that's going to lead to the rest of their life. But it also just complements the game of basketball. It helps kind of promote the kind of basketball. So, this past year we went and served dinner at a soup kitchen, and just a chance for us to get outside of the gym, do something together as a team, and to serve somebody besides ourselves.
That's awesome. I like the pancake idea. Yeah, you might see some of that on social media at Faith next year.
It's great. It's great.
Who cooks it? Who cooks it?
So we borrow our cafeteria. The lady who runs our cafeteria, she helps, and they use the actual cafeteria. But then we bring in about 6 or 7 of those propane griddles, and we make a bunch of batter up before, and then dads and coaches are out there flipping pancakes all night.
That's cool. God, you have so many great ideas. Yeah. Coaches, the one thing that every team needs is confident shooters. The last 8 years at Grapevine Faith, our teams have averaged 354 made threes each season. I love getting to share with coaches how our shooters train, and more importantly, how they think. If you would like to enhance your shooting culture at your school, contact me directly at jamodipodcast@gmail.com. One thing I've noticed, you've been able to get a lot out of your players over the years. And you also play a schedule that I think is always aggressive. You're playing bigger schools, public schools that just have way more people, way more resources. But how do you build confidence in your players?
I think a big part of that, I appreciate all that. And, I feel like I can always do a better job of this, but increasing one-on-one communication, I think, is huge. I think we have a tendency as coaches to fall back on the team communication when we're speaking to our team as a group. And I think you lose a lot, and you lose a lot in that, maybe kids not paying attention or maybe not really get what you're trying to say. And then you also increase the chance of them picking up something negative from you if you're speaking to the whole team. And when you speak to a kid one-on-one, face-to-face, you're looking them in the eye, you have a lot better chance of helping them build confidence because they know that what you're saying is directly meant for them. And when you're speaking to the team, they don't know that. And so just trying to make it a daily emphasis to speak to your players one-on-one, make sure you're encouraging them. You're having like a 10-to-1 positive to negative ratio on the things that you tell them. I think that's huge. I think you just never know when one of those little daily conversations is going to have a huge impact on a kid. I'll never forget this. When I was an assistant coach at Lubbock Trinity, coaching for Todd, there was a kid on our team. His name was Corey Wimberly, and it was right before I left to become the coach at Midland Christian, where he didn't make the varsity team as like a sophomore. He was really motivated. And I had a conversation with him at the time that seemed really inconsequential. And I don't even remember what I said, but that kid, when he was a senior, we ended up, being in the same gym somewhere. And he came up and he told me how impactful that conversation was to him and the way that it just kind of changed everything for him. And to me, I didn't even realize it at the time. But it just made me think, how many times have I missed out on having those conversations with kids because I was too busy or had my head down or had tunnel vision. So I just think the more you can communicate with a player one-on-one and give them some encouragement, the better.
I think that's super important. And I've struggled over the years of trying to figure out a way to make sure that I hit everybody. I think, you sometimes as coaches, we gravitate towards the same players. Sometimes the more talented players, the better players, or players that maybe line up with you the way you think, or it could be the players that are more headaches. We are spending more time talking to them. One thing that coach said that I got to meet with is his goal is to physically touch every player 2 times. So a pat on the back saying their name, a high five saying their name, but you kind of make that idea of everybody as you're making those laps around, you get everybody twice. I think, is it achievable to get it twice? I don't know, but it probably helps you from missing out on getting or missing one person.
Yeah, that's a great point about trying to communicate or touch every player, because we do have a tendency to gravitate towards the players that are like us and like-minded, or the rebel players. Yeah. And a lot of times they kind of take all of our attention I love having conversations like this because it's always a good reminder to me, and I'm kind of kicking myself right now. I'm like, man, I haven't had enough, one-on-one time lately, but that's a great point.
My high school coach, Coach Thomas, told me my first year, I asked him what's something that he would do if he could start over again. And he said he would spend more time with guys 9, 10, 11, and 12 on the team. And just another reminder of, man, we just tend to focus on those dudes that we know will be on the floor helping us win in those times. But yeah, that conversation you had with that kid, I think that's great. Yeah, I talked a little bit about the way that you schedule. How do you keep your team confident with such an aggressive schedule that you take your guys through? Like there's going to be some games that you just know, okay, we have to play perfect, and they probably have to play a little bit bad. And if that loss happens or something, how do you keep your guys moving forward?
Man, I'm glad you asked that question. I think especially for high school coaches, I'm sure this is true for college coaches. I'm not in that world, so I don't understand it as much. I think there's an art to scheduling, and I think it really matters how you do that, and don't just blindly make your schedule. Here's a couple things that have maybe shaped that, informed that, and my philosophy on that. One is I can remember a couple seasons early on in my career when we got eliminated in the playoffs. The team that beat us was the best team we had played. And at that point, I decided that, okay, I'm going to make sure that the team that we're running into in the playoffs is not going to be the best team we've played, and that we've played somebody better than that. So we know what it feels like. Because the first time you do something, you have very little chance of accomplishing it. We've all seen that. And so being able to put some people on your schedule that is probably going to be a loss, but your team's going to get a sense of what it takes to actually win one of those games. And then the more chances you give yourself to actually win one of those games, the better chance you have of being able to repeat it and know what it takes. And so I think you want to do that, but you got to be real careful about beating your team down and making sure that you schedule some games that are attainable. And I think, we try to schedule as few games as possible that are just going to be, we walk in the gym and win, I do think you got to be careful, because if every game is a grind, like I felt like our last year was, it's really hard to get guys 9, 10, 11, 12 playing time.
Yeah.
It's hard for your morale. So I just think trying to sit down and look at what your team needs and try to schedule it with wisdom is really important.
That's probably one of the best answers or the reasoning for why to schedule those tougher teams early on. That idea of you don't want that last team that you face being better. I think that's awesome. And I've just watched that in your teams over the years, that they just seem to be really tough, and they handle those bigger schools, that tougher competition. They handle it really well. And I think that's something I like to see happen at Faith more. So I appreciate your leadership in that.
Hey, I appreciate that. And I think, Matt, a great way to do that too is, and this is something that I got from Todd, is trying to set some benchmarks or some goals for your program of like, okay, we want to beat a 6A program. And then that's something you're trying to knock off your list. We want to beat a top 10 ranked team in UIL 6A. That's actually, this past year was the first time we've ever done that.
Who'd you beat?
It was actually Friendship, Wolford.
Yeah.
Friendship.
Nice.
And it was not a year where people would have expected that was going to happen, but something that we can look back on at the end of our season. And even though we didn't win a state championship, we have something we can really be proud of, and something that was kind of a milestone for our program.
Coach, are you ready for the speed round?
Let's do it.
The
man.
Speed round.
Let's do it.
You're going to kill it. I'm going to throw out some quick questions, and the first thing that pops in your head, you just got to answer it.
Okay. Ooh, I'm nervous.
All right. Favorite ice cream flavor?
Cookies and cream.
For high school, shot clock or no shot clock?
Shot clock.
Texting or talking?
Talking.
Favorite NBA player of all time?
Steve Nash.
Invisibility or super strength?
Oh, super strength.
Place you most want to travel?
Hawaii.
How many cups of coffee do you drink per day?
2 on average. 2.5.
2 on average. In season?
5 during the season.
How many hours of sleep do you need?
Man, I'm going to say that is, I can't do that rapid fire. I just got to say something, right?
That's right.
6.5.
6.5. Last one. Godfather or Star Wars?
Oh, Godfather.
All right. We line up in a lot of ways. I'm a Star Wars guy. My dad grew me up on that, but man.
I was not. I didn't grow up with Star Wars, and that's I blame my father.
Yeah, but Godfather sounds cooler, and most coaches answer Godfather.
Yeah,
There's
okay.
Very few.
Okay.
Very
Yeah.
few that say Star Wars.
I grew up watching Godfather when I wasn't supposed to. When it came on TV.
Well, man, hey, thank you so much for your time and doing this. I loved it. I learned so much from you today.
Well, absolutely, Matt. Thanks for having me on. It really was an honor for me. I definitely don't feel like I deserve to be on your podcast with all the great guests you've had on, but it was a great experience for me to get to think about and answer some of these questions. And I do want to say, you're probably not going to get a lot of this on your podcast, but your listeners, they're not going to get a chance to hear a lot of these things from you. But for the listeners, Matt's a great coach, and I think more than that, the way he leads is really, really neat to see how he's such a positive leader for his players and really gives them something beyond basketball. So for young coaches out there, if I could give you some advice, it would be go watch other coaches do their job, and go watch somebody. If you're in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, go watch Matt run a practice. I know he'd be happy to have you, and just see how he communicates with his players, how he leads, how he has an identity. I think that's one of the best things you can do as a young coach.
Well, that was not scripted at all. And I'll send you your check for all those nice things. I appreciate it, man. Thank you for checking out today's episode. Please take a moment to subscribe to this podcast, share it with your fellow coaches, and find us on social media for what's coming up next on the Jamodi podcast. It's just a matter of doing it.